everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I very much appreciate you clicking on this video and taking the time to watch it. If this is the kind of thing you like, I would appreciate a like as well. It's not hard, just down below the video, little thumbs up, click it. That totally helps me out. If you're not subscribed, why not? Join the family and subscribe. It's totally free. And again, it really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. In today's video, in today's podcast, we're talking all about my brother. Why would I just focus on one person, you may ask? Why the hyper fixation? Well, I'll tell you. Tomorrow, March 5th, will be the 25th anniversary of my brother's passing. That's right, 25 years since my brother joined the heavens. And today's video is not about sorrow, it's not about grief, although those things I'm sure still exist in everyone's hearts as it does mine. That's not what today's video is about. Today's video is about celebrating the man that was my brother. So without further ado, let's get right into it. From Cape Breton, it's Saturday night. So who am I talking about, you may ask? If you're not a close friend or family member, you probably don't even know. So I'll fill you in. My brother was born in August 1977. And at that time, I was only a wee little thing. I mean, less than 2 years old. All I can tell you is that from day one, I adored being a big sister. Actually, I think I was told a little story about the time when my brother came home from the hospital, and I apparently just magically didn't need diapers anymore because I was a big sister. That's the kind of fun, kind of relationship that my brother and I had. And I think we still have that. If you're not into the spiritual side of things, at the very end of this video, I will be pulling some cards from my Talking to Heaven and just to see if there's anything my brother would like to say. So if you're not into that, at the end of the video, you can just skip off. But if you are into that, stick around because we'll pull probably 3 to 5 cards and see what he wants to say. So yes, my brother was just 21 months younger than me, and many people said we looked a lot alike. A lot alike. So much that they actually thought we were twins. And I'm not talking family or, super, super close friends that knew the difference and knew that I was almost 2 years older than him. I'm talking about like him and I going into, say, Walmart, or going into the mall, or traveling together. And people often confused us as being twins, or mistaken us for being twins. And I took great pride in that because my brother was handsome. He was a very good-looking man. Now, I kind of wanted to go chronological on this because I didn't want to really spread out the video too long. And that's why, and that's because really I could talk about him for hours and I don't want to do that. I want to kind of keep it precise. And I did reach out on Facebook to get some stories and people were gracious enough to share some of their memories and their stories with me. Some family and some friends. So I'll be sharing those after I share a little bit of mine. So growing up, like I said, I was the big sister, and he was my little big brother because he was a little bigger than I was when he grew. And at the beginning, we were friends. We were definitely, compatible. We were good friends. And then the teens hit. And if any of you out there have siblings, you know what I'm talking about. Those teen years were turbulent. We fought so much. I can't tell you how many times we fought. back and forth. And maybe because we were so much alike that we fought so hard. But we fought to the point where I remember we had a babysitter and he locked me out of the house for whatever reason. Whatever fight we were having at the time. He locked me out of the house and I desperately wanted to get back in the house. So being a very spiteful, temper-driven, I was going to use another word, but temper-driven redhead, I put my fist through a window trying to get back in. So in our teen years, we fought a little bit, just a tad, to the point where, like I said, we had a babysitter. Because even in our teens, we needed supervision. But we, really quickly grew out of that. Once, I think it was probably, mid to late teens, I guess, we really grew out of it. Now, a friend of mine and a friend of my brother's, friend of mine, female, and a friend of my brother's, male, were brother and sister. That brother had passed away, and that affected my brother deeply. And that really drew our bond together. So when I saw him hurting, that's what stopped all the fighting. So it was that moment that changed our relationship. I don't think, if that had not happened, I don't think we would have been as close so quickly. I think we would have been close, but not that close that quickly. He became like a best friend. Like, truly a best friend. I remember the first time I was going to move out on my own. I think it was like 19 or 20. And his only stipulation, his only rule for me, he sat me down. His only rule was, okay, you can move out, but only if you get a 2-bedroom apartment, because I'm going to be crashing there a few times. And did he ever? He would stay with me almost every weekend. If he didn't have something else planned, he was crashed at my place. And I made sure he didn't get into too much trouble. Although there was times I'm sure he could have, but he was a pretty good guy. And what really kept him out of trouble, so to speak, was sports. Many people, now I can't dive into huge stories about this because I only saw him a handful of times play, but my brother was a rugby player. And he played for his high school team. Then after high school, he coached, assisted in coaching that high school team. And also he was not like a player on one of the higher end teams. For the province of Nova Scotia, there's, at least there were at that time, a number of rugby teams. So my brother was called up and asked to pitch in to help out one of the teams. And at that time they were playing on Cape Breton Island against Australia. That was really cool. He was so proud of that. Another thing he was totally proud of was my brother was dyslexic. And after finding that out later in life, like he was grade 10 or grade 11, grade 10, I think. And so that was pretty late in life to find out he was dyslexic. But it didn't stop him at all. It didn't slow him down, not one bit. That boy ended up graduating high school before his class. He graduated in January versus June. And he just floored it. He was amazing. He then wanted to go to university, so he went to our local university and was doing his mechanics course for car mechanics. He was a car enthusiast. And that's when it ended. That's where we're at. So at the end, he was 20 years old. And you may think it was something tragic like a car accident. And I am not diminishing any tragedy out there. Everything is tragic when it comes to losing a loved one. My brother got the flu. So this is PSA to any of you out there who are not vaccinated against a multitude of viruses. It was the flu. And that erupted a meningococcal virus. As simple as that. 20 years old. So again, PSA to anyone who needs to hear it. If you're not vaccinated against the things that can hurt you, think about it, research it, and if it were me, I would just get the vaccination. But do your own research on that. So, back to more fun things. I mentioned car enthusiast. Well, my brother totally was a car enthusiast. He would go to car shows. Now, we had an antique car when I was growing up. My parents had an antique, and we would go to all the car shows. My parents were in the car club. And so we were around antique cars quite a bit. Muscle cars and trucks and all the sorts. And we would spend from May until like October traveling around with these antique cars. So my brother was full-on enthusiast. I kind of tinkered. I know enough to get by. And that was all I needed to know. I mean, my father said as long as I knew how to clean the chrome on the T-Bird, I was doing good. And I certainly do. But my brother was an enthusiast. He knew what was coming down the street by the sound of the engine. He could tell you. He was so good, he could probably tell you it was black or purple. You know, he just really knew his stuff. That brings me to sharing a car with my brother. Now that he wasn't so great at. I worked a lot as a teen. I babysat many families. So I would save up my money and I would stow away I don't know if any of you out there remember this, but cameras used to have film in them. I know, astonishing, right? So the little plastic film containers that were for 35 millimeter film, they would be the perfect size to hold coin, like quarters and nickels and dimes, and small bills all folded up. And I would tuck that deep inside the glove box. Maybe $5, $10 in there. Because back then, gas was actually affordable. I mean, 40 cents a liter or something like that, or 37 cents a liter, 60 cents a liter. Regardless, $10 was good enough for me for a weekend to drive around town, shoot the drag, so to speak, with my friends, hang out. $10 was all I needed. And I would stow that away all week in the car, in the glove box. It was my mom's car. So I figured it's safe, like tucked in there. Come the weekend, my brother would beg and beg and beg and get the car Friday night. Of course. But I always thought Saturday night's better in town anyway, so that's okay. But I'd take the car Saturday, go pick up my friend, get the money out of the glove box, and lo and behold, the money was always gone. And you'd think, yeah, it was my mom's car. I could blame my mom. But no, I knew it was my brother. Because for some reason, he delivered papers, so he did have a job and he did have some money. And he was good with it. But he didn't like to spend his own money. So you know where he got his gas money. His big sister. And we would joke and argue over that so many times. I remember I was done high school. We were staying at the local hotel because we had had a house fire. And I was going back to school that fall because I wanted to up my grades a little bit, even though I had already graduated. And that first morning of school, my high school wasn't far away, but that first morning of school, I got up and I went outside to get in the car to go to school, and it was empty to the point where it wouldn't even start. My brother had driven it so long that he burned all the fumes in the gas tank. Not even all the gas, all the fumes. So I just went back upstairs and I'm like, you were out late last night. And all I could do was laugh. So that being said, God bless my brother. He had his own car when he passed. It was this beautiful white Hyundai XL with a pink stripe down the bottom of it. God, my dad laughed at him for that. And when he died, when my brother passed, my father, I was out west in Alberta, and when I got home, my father handed me the car keys. And so me and my cousins decide we're going to go out and we're going to go for a ride, and I'm going to go put gas in the car because I knew it was probably, if not on empty, very close to empty. So we go out, and sure enough, there might be just slight fumes left in it, just enough to get me to the gas station. I filled it. When I came home, I told my dad I filled the car. He's like, oh my God, that's probably the first time it's ever felt that. My brother was notorious for it. So, like I said, I can go on for hours about stories about my brother. The one story my mom reminded me of, and I don't remember it 100%, so I'm only going to touch on it. But she reminded me that in 94 or 96, my brother and my father went out to a friend of the family's home. And this friend of the family lived on the ocean. And they built her a lobster trap fence that year. See, my brother was good with his hands. Not only did he love cars, but he was pretty handy. What he also was a little bit vain. And that's not a bad thing. He knew he looked good. Like I said at the beginning, he was a handsome man. He knew it. You would always catch him with a comb in his pocket, brushing his hair, checking himself out. But even though he was handsome, he was also handy. The house fire, that brings me to the house fire. Because my brother was handy, he was also in charge of painting our house, a 1.5 story home, and that was his summer job. So it was August 1994, and I had graduated in June. I was out at my friend's house, and my brother had finished painting the house that day. Now, my job in this whole big job of painting a 1.5 story home, my part was to scrape the old paint off. So I had done that, and then it was my brother's job to paint the house. So on this specific day, I'm out at my friend's house, and my brother had been painting. He was finished painting. My parents were just home from work. We had a little dog at the time. I think the dog we had at that time, his name was Alvin. Like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And when my parents got home from work, my father and my brother were outside walking around the house checking his paint job. And they noticed smoke coming from the house, from the 1.5 story, from the top floor. And so they rush in, they tell my mom who's prepping dinner, and they all run out of the house. They grab the dog, they put the dog in the neighbor's yard, and my brother, I can't even, how old would he have been? 16 maybe? Or maybe just going on 17 then? Maybe. Depending on when in August it was. His birthday's in August, and he was born in 77. So he was like 16 going on 17. He ran back into the house. First, he ran into the garage. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the back of the antique car, or in the garage somewhere. I'm not exactly sure that. And then he ran into the house. Stupid. Like, really stupid. Into the fire to try to put it out. The fire departments arrived. We had 3 different fire departments arrive to our home. I was called at my friend's house, and I got there like in 3 minutes or something. The fire department was there, and the fire department told my parents that my brother slowed it down. I mean, he wouldn't have stopped it, but he definitely slowed it down. So his efforts were not in vain. But that was the type of guy he was. So now that I've told you a little bit of my stories, what I have to say, let's hear from some other people. So I'm going to read these because these are not my words. These are the words of my family and my friends. My brother's family and friends as well. So let me just refresh with a coffee break. And see if this candle can light here. Give us a little ambiance for this. There we go. Back to the side. All right. So I have just a few pages here. And like I said, I want to read them verbatim because they're not my words. These are the words of family and friends. So the first comes from my Nana. And she shares, this is not a great version of a picture because where my brother passed 25 years ago tomorrow, he skipped out on the social media age. So there's not a lot of digital photos out there. What I do have available to me on digital, I will be putting into the video, and you probably would have seen some of them by now anyway. But just for reference, my grandmother shares a picture of my brother. So she took a snapshot of this with her phone and sent it to me on Facebook Messenger. So it's a photograph, a picture of a photograph sent over social media. So it's not the greatest quality. And she said, I tried to send this picture with a caption, but it wouldn't work for her. And the caption was, she carries this picture always in her wallet. 25 years since I heard his voice, but he remains in my heart forever. I still miss him. My grandson, Nana. That's sweet. All right. We're going to try to get through these without the tears. Friend of the family wrote. Now, I'm not sure. Some of these people did not let me know if I can use their full names or their names at all. So, I'm not. I'm going to go on the caution side and not use their names. So, a friend of the family said, I just wanted to reach out and say hi and let you know how often I think of your brother Ben. Hard to believe the time that's passed. I think of him a lot. We spent a ton of time in our early teens wandering around car shows together, cruise nights, building models, and our time in the Air Cadets. He was a great pal. I think of road trips with our families, with our dads taking turns in the passing lane, searching out old cars in the country, hunting for parts. That's another story. His smile and enthusiasm was the best. He loved having fun, going on missions, and that's what I remember and still miss. There's lots of times I see a car or wander around a car meet and think of him. After high school, I went to Wolfville and later to Halifax and didn't see as much of Ben. That was my brother's name, by the way. With his shades on, shirt off, sorry, I missed a line. Let's back up there. Okay. After high school, I went to Wolfville, later Halifax, and didn't see as much of Ben. But remember 2 of our last hangs. And although brief, they've stayed with me. One was out Groves Point Beach, a local beach here. I was home from Halifax. Our dads were there. Ben with shades on, shirt off, getting some sun, just hanging out on a hot summer's day. And another time, just crossing paths late one night in Sydney. I was heading down Charlotte Street and found Ben spinning tires behind the old TD in a Jeep. We had a quick chat, a good laugh, and off he went. I'll remember his mischievous grin, good nature, so very kind, forever missed. That was sweet. Good memories. All right. Shall I take another sip before I move on? These are going to get me. Okay, next. From my uncle. I can't believe it's been 25 years since Ben left us. He had been just discovering who he was as a person and had so much loving and living to give. He was just beginning to chase his passion of cars and mechanics. I remember him telling me he was really interested in computerization. That was just beginning on car motors. Like so many who pass way before their time, we all miss out on seeing them grow and become spectacular people, which we knew he would. When Nanny and Poppy were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, Nanny and Poppy would have been my uncle's parents, my Nanny and Poppy. We had a family-focused lunch planned at my aunt's house, and an afternoon reception open to all non-direct family. At my house, planned for later that day. Oh, right. So there was a lunch at my aunt's house and then a reception at my house. I remember that. I remember that day very well. Okay, let's get back. There are photos of us all beside the garage taken that day. It was a great party. It certainly was. Where your brother comes in is at my aunt's house. There was a surprise cake we had for them, and Ben quietly went out to the car to get it from the trunk. He bent over and picked up the cake, and I'm in the process of closing the trunk, dropped the cake in the driveway. It was funny, and he laughed, but felt miserable for having dropped the cake. To help make him feel better, another uncle, always an optimist, this one, had an idea to fix the cake. Now, let me stop there for a second. I'm just going to keep my place. This cake was specially made by a family friend, and it was a vanilla and chocolate swirl cheesecake. So it wasn't like he dropped like a pastry cake, like a heavier cake, or I don't even know how to explain the texture, but a regular cake. He dropped a creamy, delicious cheesecake. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, he had an idea to fix the cake with whipping cream. So, my brother and my other uncle covered the messy cake with whipped cream to hide the drop. It was hilarious. The cake was a mess, but nobody cared. And that's true. Nobody cared. We were too busy laughing, and I hope this little story helps you and your mom on an occasion to see that we so fondly remember the life that was taken way too soon. I hope you both embrace the gift of life you both still have and continue your journey of living it to the fullest. While a piece of us was taken away the day he passed, I don't think he'd want us to stop living and giving. That's true. He, I hope, would want us to cherish his memory and hold dear how he touched us, carrying his spirit to see the good we have left to give to those around us and the kindness to those we encounter. Hugs to you and your mom. The rose will I'm getting tongue-tied. The rose will forever bloom. Whew, that one got me. Okay, let's move on. But that was a funny story. Thanks for sharing. So Family Friend says, it's crazy how time to time, for no reason, someone from your past pops into mind. Oddly, that's the case with Ben. He was one sweet, kind young gentleman who got his wings far too young for anyone to have wanted. Very true. Thank you. And thanks to all that sent in stories. And if you're not included in this and you've sent me something and I already started recording, I still thank you. All those memories are truly cherished, and we just don't hear them enough. We don't talk enough. So let's keep going. My cousin says, I can't remember when or why. That time I was at your place and we had to go to church. I didn't want to go. So you and Ben, me, convinced me that we're going to go to church to tell jokes and make fun of the priest. I can see us doing that. And I remember being angry with you guys that is exactly not what happened. However, I remember the car ride there being super fun, with Ben telling jokes and making up funny things we could say during Mass. Also, I think on that day, and many others, ice cream pies were made by your mom. Very true. My aunt says, what a handsome and lovely young man Ben was. His easygoing nature sure was nice to be around. That's true. These are all very true and very nice to read. Thank you. My uncle says, back in the late 80s, that was a long time ago for those of you that were born like after 2000, the 80s were like the last millennial. Okay? Anyway, back in the late 80s, Ben was about 9 years old. We were all out at Big Pond, a small community here that's really nice and nice beach, one afternoon. Heading back from Big Pond, I asked Ben if he'd like a ride with me in my Honda Prelude. That was a pretty sexy car back in the day. He was so excited. Like his mom, my mom, he talked non-stop the whole way back. At one point, we were coming up to the Dairy Queen. I asked him if he wanted an ice cream, thinking if he was eating an ice cream, he might stop talking for a bit. It didn't work. He took a couple of licks, but just kept on talking. He was talking so much that the ice cream started to melt and tip over his hand. I told him he better eat his ice cream because it was melting. He straightened up, took a couple more licks, and then still continued to talk the whole way back to the house. By the time we got there was nothing left of the ice cream. It had melted all over his hands. Nothing but the cone left. And he still kept talking. As we went into the house, I completely forget all of what he was talking about that day. But I'll never forget the time with him. God love him. And before I move on to the next few stories, I just want to touch on that. Pardon me. When my grandfather passed, which was just months after my brother passed, I wasn't home for that one. I had gone back to Alberta. And so I guess my family were in the church during the ceremony for my grandfather, and the lights went out. And somebody said, I don't know who it was, and if you're out there listening, you can comment and let us know who it was that said this. But somebody said something to the effect of, my grandfather was up there tinkering with the electricity and my brother was talking his ear off. My brother was a talker. When he would go collect the money for like his paper route, he'd be gone for hours. He knew all the neighbors. He was a talker. You think I talk a lot? I don't hold a candle to my lovely brother. So a friend of the family says, and thanks for that to my uncle. That was a really sweet story. Ben was one of the first friends I made where we lived in Sydney. But I remember our older years the best. His love of rugby. Friday nights, walking up and down the drag. Always laughing and always up to help pull with a practical joke. I remember at his wake, it was the best one I've had ever been to, if there can be a best in that category. We all sat around telling stories of Ben and laughing, and we just knew that was exactly the way he would have wanted it. That's true. Celebration. Make sure I'm going in the right order here. So these are just little comments that were on a Facebook post I had, so I'm going to read through those. So my grandmother said he treated everyone the same. It didn't matter who you were. If he knew you, then you were his friend. So much so that one friend even called his son after Ben. That's true. And then my mother replied, actually 2 people did that she knows of. And that's true. My brother touched so many people that we heard after the fact, like after his friends grew and were having children, that they were naming their children after my brother. Friend of mine and friend of my brother's says, Joel says he remembers seeing him at wrestling at the Bonnie many times. I could see that. The Bonnie's a local bar here. And wrestling, yeah, he totally loves all sports. All physical attachment sports. Friend of ours says, I remember playing basketball on the street with him. This is the street we grew up on, and a few people from that neighborhood commented. I remember playing basketball on the street with him and Gerald. Playing spotlight, jumping off our steps into high snowbanks. I remember bike rides and just hanging out with the street gang. I remember Ben coming to the birthday parties we had at the house. I remember seeing the ambulance at your place and Mom saying something must have happened to Bob, my dad, and is being so sad to find out it was Ben. We were in shock and so sad. This friend's sister then wrote, Ben was always a kind friend and we had so much fun growing up on our street. I remember his rosy cheeks and smile. See where I get it? My aunt said, Ben played a role in the story of my life. It's the fond memories and stories that are pieces of our present. I remember how he loved his cousins. To me and my mom, she wrote, what we once enjoyed and deeply loved can we never lose. For all we loved deeply becomes part of us. Helen Keller. That's a quote from Helen Keller that my aunt posed to my mother and I. Very nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's true. I mean, you can never truly lose somebody if you never stop loving them. Friend of the family wrote, the gentle giant that was on his way to helping others. Handsome, kind young man taken way too soon. Amen. Thank you. My aunt then wrote, the same aunt, then wrote, she wanted to send a message from my cousin who could not message. My cousin is overseas right now and just does not have access. So he sent a message through her that says, it's a nice thought to do this kind of thing, the video and the podcast. I don't have access to either method of getting a message to me. If you could include me in your thoughts you send, I'd appreciate it. And cousin, you're included. All my cousins, all my friends, all my family. You're all included, regardless of whether you took the time to send me something or not. I know you're thinking of them. I know you do. This request for stories, frankly, was just so I wasn't talking about myself the whole time. I wanted to share other people's opinions and other people's memories. Hi, I'm editing right now, and I actually received a few more submissions, and they're from my family, so I really wanted to include them. This one is from my cousin. Christmas Eve at the family home. With all the family, the old stereo turned on, the big floor model one, LOL, listening to see where Santa was. One memory in particular is the Christmas we stayed with you guys. Barb, Ben, and I slept downstairs in Ben's room. I remember the three of us waiting patiently, quote unquote, on the basement stairs until my mom gave us the okay to open the door, making sure Christmas morning was perfect. Being an only child, my cousin, and my mom, her aunt, and my father were her godparents. We spent a lot of time at the house when we were visiting Cape Breton. I always thought of Ben as my cool older cousin. It was an honor when her aunt asked her to sing at my brother's funeral at his service. The rose will forever bloom. Love. Thank you so much for that. This one is from my aunt. I recall looking after you and Ben one particular time. There were many. When I was just too lazy like every teenager, and created a little game to get you guys to burn energy. Yeah, we were pretty hyperactive. I sat in the TV room with my legs up on the coffee table and had you two chase each other in circles around the coffee table. When you approached my legs, you would crawl under, but Ben wanted me to move my legs. I added a layer of complexity for him because his speech was still coming along. I think he was 2.5, 3 years old. Just pause for a second. We always said Ben was slow to talk, but when he started, he didn't shut up. Anyway, let's continue. I said, not until you say please. Ben, with a big grin, please. Okay, I let him through. Next time around, this time say please and thank you. Ben, bigger grin and so proud. Peas and gawk you. That's cute. Last round, he added his own twist. Ben, peas, gakum, and I wavu. To this day, my heart skips when I think of that little face staring at me with the precious, very proud grin. Peas, gakum, and I wavu. Another memory strong with me, Ben's confirmation. My parents were gone somewhere on business, and Ben needed someone to attend his confirmation. We were raised Catholic. And be his sponsor. Her husband and my aunt picked him up and took him back to our place for the night because we ended up having a snowstorm. It was April 4th, I believe. Yes, we do get spring snowstorms here. When we got back to our place, he was overwhelmed with gratitude that we were there for him on his special night. He could not thank us enough. In my mind, it was such a small thing, a family thing anyone would do. But it really meant the world to him. And that feeling of gratitude never left me. Want the story for you guys taking turns driving too fast on Mountain Road? It was actually the Woodbine. Remember that night? Oh, I do. Her husband and her had to figure out how to get us out of the bind before my dad would find out I lost control of the truck. It was actually the XL, I believe, the silver XL my mom had. And I believe my parents were in Jamaica, and my brother and I were home alone, and I was driving. And, well, I didn't quite make the turn on this back road and ended up in the ditch. And funny enough, the car didn't flip, but it was really steep in the ditch, and my brother actually got out of the passenger seat and braced the car. Again, stupid, but he knew the car wasn't going to flip. But I was terrified, so he pretended to brace the car for me so I would get out, and then we both pushed it down into the culvert so that it would be safe and flat. And then my aunt and uncle came and got us, and then we had to call a tow truck, and all the money my parents had left us for groceries went to pay for a tow truck. And my mom said there was mud falling off the bottom of her car, which was not damaged besides mud. Mud falling off the bottom of her car for 6 months. Yes, that's a happy memory. But that's great. Thanks so much for those stories. I'm sorry I missed them before I started filming, but I'm glad I got them while I was editing and was able to add them. Thanks so much, guys. So with that said, we're to the woohoo part of this podcast. So if this is not for you, see you later. Join me next week when I don't know what I'll talk about, but I'll make sure it's something pretty interesting. And for those of you sticking around, let's get to her. Let's see what my brother would like to say. So these cards are called Talking to Heaven. James Van Parg, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and I apologize to him if he's listening to this at any point in his lifetime. But I read this book. It really helped me when my brother died. So when I saw these cards, and I like tarot cards, I mean, I just play with them really. But when I saw this specific deck at a store I was at in New Brunswick, I just had to because I love the book so much. So let me give them a shuffle and we'll see what it says. So we'll put the intention in there. Ben, if there's anything you would like to share with us, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Ben, looking to speak with you. Ben, we're talking about you. We'd like to hear from you. Oh, I keep hitting the mic with my shuffling. Ben, if you're out there, I'd like to hear from you. You can send us some messages. Anything you'd like to say? Oh, my hands are not big enough for this. This is why I don't do readings or tarot very often. Look at this. These cards are massive. Ben, if you're out there and you'd like to share a message with us, now is your time. You can share anything you'd like. Oh, I think the cards are ready, folks. Let me give them one more shovel. Freudian slip. Shuffle. And ready. Okay. Got the cards. Ooh. Okay, well, we'll take that one. And I don't know how. Let's try this again. Alright. Alright, let's see what he has to say. So the card that felt like didn't want to cut is this one. So for those of you not watching on YouTube, it says, I will always point you in the right direction. So I left that one out because it fell from the top, but I pulled 5. I cut the deck and then I pulled 5 cards, and let's see what they say. First card says, I am standing right next to you. Second card, the earth is our school. Third card, I have become one of your guides. I've seen my brother. That is true. I know that. Fourth card, don't be afraid. And last but not least, and I think this one is most important of all of them, I feel happy, healthy and happy. I feel healthy and happy. So, again, if you're not into the woo-woo stuff, into tarot, into any of those spiritual things, this is not for you. But I am, and these are messages I know have come from my brother. So he's telling me, he's telling all of us really, but he's telling me that he's my guide. He's always with me. He's happy, he's healthy, because when he died, it was an illness, and not to be afraid and to learn from this earth when I'm here. So I'll take those messages. Thank you, Ben. And thank you all. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this celebration of my brother. And the last 25 years have been tough. Not gonna lie. The next 25 may be tough as well. But we're all in this together, and we all share our memories together. And I hope that continues. And now with a digital imprint, hopefully I can just look back at this at any time and remember. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great night from Cape Breton. It's Saturday night. Take care. See you later.